In a town where trust was worth more than gold, one woman carried a secret heavier than the iron in her hand, and it was about to change everything. The sun bled orange across the Sierra Nevada as Lena Carver rode into Red Hollow, Nevada. In the spring of 1881, dust swirled around her horse's hooves, clinging to her weathered duster coat like a second skin. Her revolver, holstered low at her hip, caught the dying light, and her sharp green eyes scanned the town under the brim of her hat. Red Hollow was a mining outpost, its streets lined with sagging saloons, a general store, and the looming shadow of the mining office. The air smelled of sagebrush and smoke, and the townsfolk miners with calloused hands. Women in faded bonnets paused to stare as she passed. Whispers trailed her like the dust, but Lena kept her gaze forward, her jaw set. "Time to take what's mine," she muttered, her voice low and resolute. She dismounted outside the mining office, tying her horse to a weathered post. The sign above the door read Holt Mining Co., and Lena's fingers brushed the revolver at her side as she stepped inside. The office was dim, cluttered with maps and ledgers, the air thick with cigar smoke. Jasper Holt sat behind a desk, a weary man in his 40s with a crooked smile and eyes cold as a winter creek. Two burly henchmen stood nearby, their hands resting on their guns. Lena didn't flinch. "Jasper Holt," she said, her voice firm, cutting through the silence. "I'm Lena Carver, here for my husband's claim. Plot 47, registered in his name, Thomas Carver." Holt leaned back, his smirk curling like smoke. "Carver, huh? Sorry, Mum. But claims don't pass to widows, especially not ones who ridin' alone, stirring up trouble. This is a man's game." Lena's hand twitched near her revolver, and the henchmen tensed, their fingers itching for their guns. The room felt like a powder keg, ready to spark. "My husband died in your mine, Holt," Lena said, her voice low and dangerous. "That claim's mine by law. You gonna hand over the deed? Or do I need to take it myself?" Holt's smirk faded just for a moment as he sized her up. "You got fire, I'll give you that," he said. "But fire don't last long in Red Hollow. Get out of my office for I have you dragged out." Lena stepped out into the dusk, her jaw tight, her heart pounding with a mix of anger and resolve. Across the street, outside the saloon, Amos Kane watched her. He was a broad-shouldered blacksmith in his mid-30s, his face rugged, a faint scar from the Civil War tracing his cheek. He wiped soot from his hands, his eyes narrowing as he saw the defiance in Lena's stride. The saloon's piano tinkled faintly, and a low rumble of thunder rolled in the distance. Stirring the dust, a group of roughnecks lounging outside the saloon blocked Lena's path, their laughter sharp and mocking. "Look here, boys, a lady gunslinger," one jeered. "Whatcha plannin' to do with that iron, sweetheart?" Lena's eyes didn't waver. "Step aside," she said, her voice cold as steel, "or you'll find out." The roughnecks laughed, but one reached for her arm. In a flash, Lena drew her revolver, the sharp click of the hammer silencing the crowd. "Last warning," she said. Before the situation could explode, Amos stepped forward, his voice calm but heavy with authority. "That's enough, fellas," he said. "Let the lady pass." The roughnecks eyed Amos's muscular frame and the heavy hammer slung at his belt. They backed off, muttering curses under their breath. Lena lowered her gun but kept it in hand, giving Amos a wary glance. "Didn't ask for your help," she said. Amos smiled faintly, unperturbed. "Didn't look like you needed it. But Holt's men don't play fair. You're stirring a hornet's nest." Inside the saloon, they sat at a corner table, away from the card games and clinking glasses. A lantern flickered between them, casting shadows across Amos's scarred face. Lena kept her guard up, her fingers resting near her revolver. "Why'd you step in?" she asked. "Don't know me from a hole in the ground." Amos leaned forward, his voice steady. "Let's just say I know Holt's kind. Been fleecing miners for years, cheating 'em out of claims. You're not the first to come looking for justice." Lena's eyes narrowed. "And you are some kinda hero." Amos paused, his voice heavy with memory. "No, just a man who's seen too much to stay quiet. You got a place to stay tonight." Lena hesitated, unused to kindness without a catch. "I'll manage," she said. Amos nodded toward the street. "My forge is just down the way. Got a cot in the back. Ain't much, but it's safer than sleepin' in the open, with Holt's dogs sniffin' around. Lena studied him, her green eyes searching for deceit. Finding none, she nodded once. I'll think on it, she said. But don't expect me to owe you. Amos chuckled, a low, warm sound. Wouldn't dream of it, as Lena led her horse toward Amos's forge. The night closed in around Red Hollow. From the mining office window, Jasper Holt watched her go, his face shadowed, his eyes glinting with malice. He turned to his henchman, his voice cold as the desert night. Find out who she is, he said, and what she knows. Nobody threatens. Me in my town. Lena's silhouette faded into the darkness, her revolver catching the moonlight. In Red Hollow, secrets didn't stay buried long, and Lena Carver's past was about to light a fuse that could burn the whole town down. The forge glowed like a heartbeat in the dark of Red Hollow, its embers casting a warm light across the cluttered workshop. Lena Carver stood in the doorway, her duster coat draped over a chair, her revolver still holstered at her hip. The air smelled of molten iron and leather, and the faint clatter of Amos Kane's hammer echoed as he worked a horseshoe at the anvil. Lena's green eyes flicked over the room tools hung neatly on the walls. A cot tucked in the corner, a tin coffee pot steaming on a small stove. It was a simple place, honest in a way Red Hollow's dusty streets were not. She hesitated, her fingers brushing the edge of her hat, unsure whether to trust the man who'd offered her shelter. Amos glanced up, wiping sweat from his brow, his scarred face softened by the firelight. Cot's over there, he said, nodding. Toward the corner. Blankets clean. Coffee's hot if you want it. Lena's jaw tightened, her voice guarded. Why are you doing this, Kane? You don't know me. Men don't offer something for nothing in a town like this. Amos set the hammer down, his eyes meeting hers, steady and unflinching. Maybe I'm tired of seeing folks like Holt run this town into the ground. Maybe I think you're worth more than the trouble he's planning for you. Lena's lips pressed into a thin line, but she didn't argue. She sat on the cot, her posture stiff, and poured herself a tin mug of coffee, the steam curling under her chin. The night was quiet, save for the distant howl of a coyote and the creak of the forge's wooden beams. Lena sipped her coffee, her voice low, like she was testing the waters. My husband, Thomas, died in that mine collapse last year. Plot 47 was his. We worked it together before it all went wrong. Her fingers tightened around the mug, her eyes distant. I don't think it was an accident. Somebody wanted him gone. Amos leaned against the workbench, his arms crossed. Holt's got a way of making things disappear. Claims, people, truth. I've seen miners sell their stakes for pennies, scared off by his men. You're not the first to come looking for answers. Lena's gaze sharpened. And you? What's a blacksmith doing sticking his neck out for a stranger? Amos paused, his voice heavy, like the weight of his past was pressing down. I was a Union soldier, back in '64. Saw things I couldn't unsee. Officers stealing rations, leaving men to die for profit. I walked away, deserted, and ended up here. Red Hollow was supposed to be a fresh start, but Holt's corruption followed me. I'm no hero, Lena, but I'm done looking the other way. His words hung in the air, raw and honest, and for the first time, Lena's guard softened, just a fraction. She reached into her satchel and pulled out a folded letter, its edges worn and stained. Found this in Thomas's things, she said, unfolding it. It's coded, but it talks about a silver vein, richer than anything Holt's mined. I think that's why Thomas died. Amos stepped closer, studying the letter's cryptic symbols under the lantern's glow. If Holt knows about this, he'll kill to keep it. You need to watch your back. Lena's eyes flashed with defiance. I'm not running, not from him. Amos nodded, a spark of respect in his gaze. Then we'll need to move fast. I know a back trail to the mine. We can check it out tomorrow night. See if your letter's telling the truth. Lena hesitated, her instinct to work alone warring with the sense that Amos was different. All right, she said finally. But if you cross me, Kane, you'll regret it. He gave a wry smile. Fair enough. Outside, the night deepened, and Red Hollow slept under a blanket of stars. But in the shadows near the forge, two of Holt's men crouched, their whispers sharp as knives. She's got something. One hissed, his eyes glinting. Holt'll want to know. They slipped away, their boots silent on the dusty ground as the forge's fire burned low. Lena lay on the cot, her revolver within reach, her mind racing with the weight of her secret. Amos sat by the stove, staring into the embers, his own ghost stirring, in Red Hollow. Trust was a rare coin, and they'd just bet it all on each other. But the truth they were chasing was buried deeper than silver, and it was about to draw blood. The moon hung low over Red Hollow, its pale light barely piercing the shadows of the Sierra Nevada. Lena Carver and Amos Kane slipped through the night, their boots crunching softly on the rocky trail leading to the mine. Lena's revolver gleamed at her hip, her duster coat blending with the darkness, while Amos carried a lantern. Its flame shuddered to a faint glow. The air was sharp with the scent of pine and dust, and the distant hoot of an owl carried over the silence. Lena clutched the coded letter in her gloved hand, its cryptic lines burning in her mind, a map to a silver vein that might hold the truth. About her husband's death, Amos moved beside her, his broad frame steady, his hammer slung at his belt. Like a promise, "Stay close," he whispered, his voice low. "Holt's men patrol the ridge." Lena nodded, her green eyes scanning the darkness, every nerve taut as a bowstring. They reached the mine's entrance, a black maw carved into the mountainside, its wooden beams sagging under years of neglect. Lena's heart pounded, memories of her husband Thomas flashing unbidden, his laugh, his calloused hands, the way he'd promised her a future before the collapse stole him away. She pushed the thoughts down, focusing on the task. Amos pried open a rusted gate, and they slipped inside, the lantern casting jagged shadows on the tunnel walls. The air grew heavy, thick with the smell of damp earth and old dynamite. "Look here," Amos said, kneeling by a pile of broken timbers. He ran his fingers over the wood, his scarred face grim. "These ain't natural breaks. See the burn marks. Someone set charges." Lena crouched beside him, her breath catching as she traced the charred edges. "This was no accident," she said, her voice trembling with anger. "Holt sabotaged the mine. He killed Thomas and God knows how many others." Before Amos could reply, a scuffle echoed from the tunnel's mouth. Lantern light flickered as two of Holt's men appeared, their rifles glinting. "Who's there?" One barked, his voice rough as gravel. Lena doused the lantern, plunging the tunnel into darkness, and grabbed Amos's arm, pulling him behind. A stack of crates. Her whisper was urgent. "We gotta move. Now." They crawled through the shadows, the men's boots thudding closer, their lanterns sweeping the tunnel. Lena's hand rested on her revolver, her pulse racing. Amos pointed to a narrow side passage, barely wide enough for one. "There," he hissed. They squeezed through, the rock scraping Lena's shoulders, until they emerged into a wider chamber, its walls glinting with flecks of silver. Amos relit the lantern, revealing a vein of ore shimmering like starlight. "This is it," Lena whispered, holding up the coded letter. "Thomas found this vein. Holt wanted it for himself." The moment was cut short by a shout. "They're in here." Holt's men had found the passage. Lena drew her revolver, her eyes fierce. "Stay behind me," she told Amos, but he was already moving, hammer in hand. The first man charged, rifle raised, but Lena fired a warning shot, the bullet ricocheting off the rock with a deafening crack. "Drop it," she shouted. The man froze, but his partner lunged, swinging a pickaxe. Amos tackled him, the two crashing to the ground in a flurry of dust. Lena spun, aiming at the first man, but he bolted, shouting for backup. "We're out of time," Amos grunted, pinning his opponent until the man went limp. Lena grabbed the lantern. "Let's go." They sprinted out of the mine, the sound of hoof beats thundering in the distance. Holt's men were coming. The rocky canyons beyond the mine offered little cover, but Lena led the way, her sharpshooting instincts kicking in. A bullet whizzed past, grazing Amos's arm, and he stumbled, blood seeping through his sleeve. Lena cursed under her breath, pulling him behind a boulder. "You hit bad?" she asked, her voice tight. "Just a scratch," Amos said, wincing but forcing a grin. "Keep moving." Lena fired back, her shots precise, forcing the pursuers to duck. The canyon echoed with gunfire, the air thick with dust and the sharp tang of gunpowder. Lena's heart pounded, not just for survival, but for the truth she'd uncovered, the proof Holt had murdered her husband. They reached a narrow ravine, the horses tied nearby. Lena helped Amos mount, her hands steady despite the chaos. They rode hard, the moon guiding their path back to the forge. Inside, Amos slumped against the workbench, clutching his arm. Lena tore a strip from her shirt, wrapping the wound with practiced hands. "You're tougher than you look," she said, a faint smile breaking through her worry. Amos chuckled weakly. "You're one to talk." Lena pulled out the coded letter. "Its secret's now clear. This vein's the key," she said. "Holt's been killin' to keep it. I'm gonna bury him with it." Amos's eyes darkened. "You go after him alone, you're dead. Let me help." Lena shook her head. "This is my fight." But before Amos could argue, a small figure appeared in the doorway, a girl, no older than 10. Her face smudged with dirt, her eyes wide with fear. "I heard you talking about the mine," the girl said, her voice trembling. "My brother died in that collapse. Name's Ellie. I want Holt to pay." Lena knelt, her heart twisting at the girl's pain, so like her own. "You're brave, Ellie," she said softly. "But this is dangerous." Ellie's chin lifted, defiant. "I ain't got no one else. Let me help." Lena glanced at Amos, their eyes meeting in silent agreement. The fight was no longer just hers, it was theirs, bound by loss and a hunger for justice. Outside, the night stretched on, and Holt's men circled closer, their shadows lurking like wolves. The truth was out, but the cost was rising, and Red Hollow was about to face a reckoning. The forge was a fortress of flickering light, its embers casting long shadows across the walls of Amos Kane's workshop. Lena Carver sat at the workbench, her green eyes fixed on the coded letter. Its secrets now laid bare, a map to a silver vein that had cost her husband's life. Her fingers traced the paper's worn edges, her heart heavy with the weight of truth and vengeance. Amos leaned against the wall, his arm bandaged from the graze of a bullet, his face etched with quiet resolve. Little Ellie stood nearby, her small hands clutching a tin mug of water, her eyes burning with a defiance that belied her 10 years. The air in the forge was thick with the smell of iron and worry, and outside, Red Hollow slept under a sky pricked with stars. But the night felt alive with danger, as if Jasper Holt's men were closing in. Their whispers carried on the desert wind. Lena broke the silence, her voice steady but raw. "This letter proves Holt sabotaged the mine. He killed Thomas to keep that silver vein for himself. I'm taking it to the sheriff tomorrow, and Holt's gonna swing for it." Amos's jaw tightened, his voice low. "Sheriff's in Holt's pocket, Lena. You need more than a letter to bring him down. We need a plan." Before Lena could reply, Ellie stepped forward, her voice trembling but fierce. "My brother was in that mine, too. I want to help. I know where Holt keeps his ledgers, in the back of the saloon. If we get those, we can prove he's been stealing claims." Lena knelt, her heart twisting at the girl's courage. "Ellie, you're brave as they come. This ain't a game. Holt's men'll kill you without blinking." Ellie's chin lifted. "I ain't scared. I got nothing left to lose." Amos nodded, his eyes meeting Lena's. "She's right about the ledgers. I've seen Holt's men haulin' papers late at night. If we can get 'em, we'll have proof to rally the town." Lena hesitated, her instinct to protect Ellie warring with the fire in her gut. "All right," she said finally, "but you stay close, Ellie. No heroics." The girl nodded, a spark of hope in her eyes. They began to plan a midnight raid on the saloon, using the back alleys to avoid Holt's patrols. But as they spoke, a shadow moved outside the forge, a figure slipping away into the night. Holt's men had been listening, and the trap was already tightening. The next morning, Amos headed to the general store to gather supplies, leaving Lena and Ellie at the forge. Lena was teaching Ellie how to clean a revolver, her hands steady as she showed the girl how to load a chamber. "You don't ever aim unless you mean to shoot," Lena said, her voice soft but firm. Ellie nodded, her small fingers mimicking Lena's movements. The moment was cut short by a knock at the door. Lena's hand went to her gun, but it was only Amos, his face pale, his eyes wide with something like dread. "Lena," he said, his voice low, urgent. "I need to talk to you, alone." Ellie stepped outside to tend the horses, and Amos shut the door, his hands trembling slightly. I talked to the deputy at the store. He said he let something slip, Lena. Thomas might not be dead. The words hit Lena like a bullet, stealing her breath. Her vision blurred, the forge spinning around her. What are you talking about? She whispered, her voice breaking. Amos's voice was heavy, with regret. The deputy said a man matching Thomas's description was seen with Holt's crew last month. Ridden out to the mine. Said he's been working with Holt. Faked his death to cut you out of the claim. Lena's knees buckled, and she gripped the workbench, her knuckles white. No, she said, her voice a raw plea. That can't be true. Thomas loved me. He wouldn't. But doubt crept in, cold and sharp, as memories of Thomas's secretive late-night meetings with Holt flashed through her mind. She'd been a bounty hunter before she married him, tracking outlaws across the territories. She'd seen betrayal up close, but never like this, not from the man she'd vowed to build a life with. The truth crashed over her like a wave, and with it came a fire she hadn't felt in years. If Thomas is alive, she said, her voice low and dangerous, he's gonna answer to me. But Holt's the one pulling the strings. He's the one I want. Amos grabbed her arm, his grip firm. Lena, you go charging in now. You're playing his game. We stick to the plank at the ledgers. Expose him. But before Lena could respond, a scream pierced the air. Ellie. They rushed outside to find the yard empty, the horses spooked, and a scrap of Ellie's shawl caught on a fence post. A note was pinned beneath it, scrawled in Holt's jagged hand. Bring the letter to the mining camp by sundown, or the girl dies. Lena's heart pounded, rage and fear twisting together. He's got Ellie, she said, her voice shaking with fury. Amos's face hardened, his scar stuck in the morning light. We'll get her back, he said. But we do this smart. Lena clutched the coded letter, her mind racing. She'd come to Red Hollow for justice, but now it was personal. Ellie was family, even if only for a moment, and no one would take that from her. She looked at Amos, their eyes locking in a shared resolve. We move tonight, she said. Holt wants a fight. He's gonna get one. Outside, the wind howled through Red Hollow, carrying the scent of sagebrush and betrayal. The town was a powder keg, and Lena's secret, her past as a bounty hunter. Her husband's betrayal was the spark that would set it ablaze. The sun sank low over Red Hollow, painting the Sierra Nevada in hues of blood and fire. Lena Carver and Amos Kane rode hard toward Jasper Holt's mining camp, the wind whipping through the sagebrush and carrying the distant clang of pickaxes. Lena's revolver rested heavy at her hip, her green eyes burning with a mix of rage and resolve. Ellie's scream still echoed in her mind, a sharp reminder of what was at stake, not just the silver vein, not just her husband's betrayal, but a girl who'd become family in the span of a single night. Amos rode beside her, his arm still bandaged from the bullet graze, his face set like stone. His hammer hung at his belt, and his eyes scanned the horizon for Holt's men. The coded letter was tucked inside Lena's coat, its secrets a ticking clock. The mining camp loomed ahead, a sprawl of tents and flickering lanterns nestled in a rocky canyon, guarded by men with rifles and mean dispositions. Lena reined in her horse at the canyon's edge, her voice low and fierce. Holt wants the letter, but he ain't getting it without a fight. We go in quiet, find Ellie, and get out before they know we're there. Amos nodded, his voice steady despite the pain in his arm. I know a back trail leads to the supply tents. Holt keeps his prisoners close to his gold. Follow me. They dismounted, tying their horses to a gnarled juniper, and crept through the shadows, Lena's bounty hunting instincts guiding her steps. The camp buzzed with activity, miners hauling ore, guards barking orders, but the night cloaked them. As they slipped past, Lena's heart pounded, her senses sharp, every creak of a wagon or snap of a twig setting her nerves on edge. They reached a guarded tent at the camp's heart, its canvas flap tied shut. A faint whimper came from inside Ellie. Lena's grip tightened on her revolver, but before she could move, a figure stepped from the shadows, his silhouette achingly familiar. Thomas Carver, her husband, alive, his face leaner than she remembered, his eyes cold and distant. He wore Holt's colors, a rifle slung over his shoulder. Lena froze, her breath catching, the world tilting beneath her. Thomas, she whispered, her voice breaking with a mix of hope and betrayal. He didn't flinch, "You shouldn't be here, Lena," he said, his voice flat. "You were supposed to stay gone." The words cut deeper than any bullet, and Lena's hand trembled on her gun. "You faked your death," she said, her voice rising. "You left me to mourn you, and for what? Silver, power." Thomas's jaw tightened. Holt offered me a way out, a new life. "You were better off without me." Amos stepped forward, his voice low and dangerous. "She's not the one who needs to answer for this." But before Thomas could respond, a shout rang out Holt's. Men had spotted them, lanterns flared, and the camp erupted into chaos. Lena dove for cover behind a crate, pulling Amos with her as bullets tore through the air. "Get to Ellie," she shouted, firing back, her shots precise, dropping to guards. In a heartbeat, Amos sprinted toward the tent, his hammer swinging, knocking a rifle from a guard's hands. Lena followed, her eyes locked on Thomas, who hesitated, his rifle lowered. "Help us, Thomas," she pleaded, but he turned away, disappearing into the fray. Inside the tent, Ellie was tied to a post, her face bruised but her eyes fierce. Amos cut her ropes, and Lena pulled her close, her voice soft but urgent. "You're safe now, kid. Stay with Amos." But the reunion was cut short as Holt himself stormed in, flanked by his enforcers, his crooked smile twisting into a sneer. "You're a stubborn one, Carver," he said, leveling a shotgun at her. "Hand over the letter, or the girl gets it first." Lena's heart pounded, but her bounty hunting instincts kicked in. She tossed the letter to the ground, her eyes never leaving Holt's. "Take it," she said, her voice cold. As Holt reached for it, she lunged, tackling him to the ground. The tent exploded into a brawl. Amos fought off the enforcers, his hammer a blur. While Ellie scrambled for cover. In the chaos, Thomas reappeared, his rifle aimed at Lena. Her heart stopped, but instead of firing, he turned the gun on Holt's men, dropping one with a single shot. "Go," he shouted, his voice cracking with regret. Lena didn't hesitate. She grabbed Ellie, and Amos cleared a path, but a stray bullet caught him in the shoulder, and he fell, blood pooling beneath him. Lena's scream tore through the night as she dragged him behind a wagon, her hands shaking as she pressed her scarf to his wound. "Stay with me, Amos," she whispered, her voice thick with fear. Holt staggered to his feet, the letter in hand, but before he could escape, the camp's lanterns caught a spark, and flames roared through the tents. Swallowing the night in fire, Lena faced Thomas across the inferno, her revolver raised, her heart torn between justice and the love she'd once known. "Why?" she demanded, tears stinging her eyes. Thomas's voice was hollow. "I was weak, Lena. Holt owned me, but I won't let him take you too." He tossed her his rifle and turned to hold off Holt's men, giving her a chance to escape. Lena made her choice, not vengeance, but justice. She left Thomas to his fate, pulling Amos to his feet and carrying Ellie through the flames. The camp burned behind them, and as they reached the horses, the townsfolk of Red Hollow appeared, drawn by the fire, their faces hard with anger. "Holt's done," one shouted, and the crowd surged, ready to arrest the man who'd bled their town dry. Lena collapsed beside Amos, her hands stained with his blood, her voice a fierce promise. "You're not leaving me, Kane, not now." Amos's eyes fluttered, his voice weak but warm. "Ain't planning to." Ellie clung to Lena, her small frame trembling, and in that moment, they were a family, forged in fire and bound by a fight for something bigger than themselves. Red Hollow's reckoning had begun, and Lena's heart, though scarred, beat stronger than ever. The summer sun rose over Red Hollow, casting a golden glow across the Sierra Nevada, where the scars of Jasper Holt's mining camp lay smoldering. The town buzzed with new life, its streets alive with miners hauling silver from the vein Lena Carver had uncovered, now shared among those Holt had cheated for years. The air smelled of fresh-cut timber and hope, a stark contrast to the dust and fear that had once choked the valley. Lena stood outside Amos Kane's forge, her duster coat hung on a peg, her green eyes softer now, though still sharp with the fire of a woman who'd faced down betrayal and won. Beside her, Ellie, the orphan girl who'd become her shadow, clutched a small wooden horse Amos had carved, her face bright with a smile that hadn't been there a month ago. Amos leaned against the forge's doorway, his shoulder bandaged but healing, his scarred face warmed by a quiet pride. Red Hollow was theirs. Now not just a town, but a home. Months had passed since the night the mining camp burned. Jasper Holt was gone, locked away in a Carson City jail, his ledgers exposing years of theft and murder. The townsfolk had rallied, their anger at Holt's crimes forging a new strength. Lena had stood before them, the coded letter in hand, and told the truth about the silver vein, how it belonged to the miners, not one man's greed. Thomas, her husband, had vanished after the fire, his fate uncertain, but Lena no longer chased his ghost. She'd chosen justice over vengeance, and in that choice, she'd found something stronger, a family. Amos had taken her and Ellie in, not with words, but with actions, building a small room off the forge for Ellie, teaching her to hammer iron, and sharing quiet evenings with Lena under the stars. Now, Lena worked the forge alongside Amos, her hands steady as she shaped horseshoes, her laughter mingling with Ellie's as the girl chased a stray chicken across the yard. The forge was more than a workshop. It was a hearth, warm with the life they'd built together. One morning, as Lena swept the floor, Amos handed her a small silver ring, its surface etched with a tiny star. "Found this in the vein," he said, his voice low, steady. "Thought it belonged on your hand." Lena's breath caught, her heart full in a way she hadn't thought possible after Thomas's betrayal. She slipped the ring on, her fingers brushing Amos's calloused hand. "Didn't think I'd find this again," she said, her voice soft. "A place to belong." Amos smiled, his scar catching the light. "You didn't find it, Lena. You made it." Ellie ran up, her wooden horse clutched tight, her eyes wide with excitement. "Lena, Amos, the miners are planting a tree by the creek for my brother and the others who died. They're calling it the Iron Star, after the vein." Lena knelt, pulling Ellie close. "That's a fine name, kid," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "They'll be remembered." The three of them walked to the creek, joining the townsfolk under a young cottonwood, its leaves trembling in the breeze. A preacher spoke of loss and renewal, and Lena felt Amos's hand slip into hers, Ellie's small fingers gripping her other hand. They weren't bound by blood, but by something deeper, a shared fight, a shared home. As the sun dipped low, painting the mountains gold, Lena thought of Red Hollow's history. In the 1880s, mining towns like this one rose and fell on the promise of silver, but they were built on the backs of men and women who dared to dream beyond survival. The Comstock lode, not far from Red Hollow, had sparked a rush that shaped Nevada, drawing folks like Lena and Amos searching for a second chance. Their story wasn't just about silver. It was about justice, about holding fast to what mattered, about family forged in fire. Lena looked at Amos and Ellie, her heart steady, and knew she'd found her place, not in a claim or a vein, but in the quiet strength of those beside her. So, if you're moved by stories of grit and heart, hit that like button and subscribe to join us for more tales of the West. What would you do if you uncovered a secret that could change a town or break your heart? Drop it in the comments below. In Red Hollow, Lena Carver had faced the past and built a future, and under the wide Nevada sky, she, Amos, and Ellie stood together, their shadows stretching long, their legacy as enduring as the Iron Star itself.